Hey guys, so I bet most of you didn't realize that you actually feed bees. A lot of beekeepers do, some don't, but we do. And the reason being is because bees have to exert a lot of energy when they are drawing out comb and foraging for nectar. And the food that we give them is actually a mixture of white caster sugar and water. It's about a 1-to-1 ratio, or it can kind of vary depending on the time of year. And basically it acts as a carb, so it gives the bees energy so they can go out and forage and not really kind of have to worry too much about food and are not stressed. So there's a few different ways of doing it. You can actually have feeders that go inside of the actual hives themselves, but we actually elected to have front feeders with mason jars. The reason being it's just actually easier for us to actually refill them to see how much sugar syrup is in there. At the moment they're going through about 1 mason jar every 3 days. And just as a side note to add that once you put a honey super on top, that's when you actually stop feeding the bees. So up until that point you can carry on feeding them, but once the actual honey super goes on top that we will actually have for the honey ourselves, you stop feeding them because that actual syrup can affect the quality of the honey. So I'm going to show you our setup, and with that I'll get to the hives. All right, see ya. So as you can see here, we have the mason jar, which is the front feeding way of doing the sugar syrup to deliver it to the bees. They are going to be underneath the mason jar, accessing the syrup from below. And as you can see, all 3 of the jars are empty. We put them in 3 days ago and they've kind of gone through it pretty quickly. Some beekeepers tend not to feed them. They just kind of think, well, bees should be kind of doing it, you know, gathering and kind of drawing out the comb themselves without any help. But you know, the general consensus is that the bees do need a little bit of help, especially at winter time. Of course, here in Southern California, it's a little bit different. And then one caveat to it is, as well, as soon as the honey supers go on, which is the box which we will actually take and harvest the honey for ourselves, as soon as those go on, that's actually the time to stop feeding the bees any kind of sugar water, essentially. And as you can see, the bees are below. And in the mason jar lid are the little holes, and that's where the bees stick their little tongue in and pull out the sugar water. Right, so I have cleaned out the jars. You always want to clean out the jars as much as you can and put new sugar syrup into the jars. They're all nice and full. The bees will be very happy. They're actually in a really good mood today, which is a nice change because I got stung yesterday. Yeah, hopefully they'll be all good, and I'll be back in another 3 days to give them some more.